Sometimes we just need a little something extra to do in life, maybe a hobby. Today what we're going to talk about is what crawling is really and how you would go about selecting your very first rock crawler. So this is a beginner guide. So today I would like to talk about rock crawlers just in general as a concept. Crawlers weren't around when I was a kid, but it really reminds me of when I used to play with RC cars as a child. And I had this Radio Shack truck, and it wasn't very capable, but it was 4x4, and I would walk behind it and go through the neighborhood and just have a good old time. So what are rock crawlers when we're comparing to the rest of the radio control industry? And what I have here is essentially rock crawlers or trailers. I'm going to use the term rock crawler, and when I say that, it is going to include trail rigs, scale rigs, and really anything that is essentially a 4x4 truck when it boils down to it. So rock crawlers are 4x4 trucks. That's the best way to explain it. So whether it looks like a rock buggy, or whether it looks like a classic truck like this guy, or maybe it is some crazy custom build, you know, like this competition motor on axle style for the 2.2 MOA class for what used to be the USRCCA. Now it is an international competing body. There's tons of different types, tons of different styles, but if you're a beginner just looking to get into this, you're probably going to go more along the lines of a basic rock crawler or trail rig, something like this Element Enduro, or maybe this mini Capra right here, or we can go even smaller. We have this TRX4M, and even smaller than that, we have this Element ECX Barrage. Yeah, 24th scale, 18th scale, also 18th scale. There's obviously different sizes, and then this one is a 10th scale. So when you get into this, or if you want to get into this, a lot of what your consideration is going to be revolving around the budget. And the larger that the rig is, the more expensive that it is pretty much all the way around, although there are, of course, some exceptions to this rule. But that's one thing that you can actually use to guide yourself. These little bitty 24 scale, typically they're going to run, depending on what brand and everything and where you get it, maybe somewhere from 60 bucks to about 100 bucks, 120 bucks, ready to run, of course. Then for these guys, you step up to the 18th scale. These TRX4Ms are about $150 ready to run. They come with everything that you need, maybe a couple of AA batteries for the transmitter, as usual on pretty much all of them, but comes with a battery. Same for this Capra. Now, I believe the mini Capra is about $250 retail. It is something that you can just look up online for whatever the up-to-date prices are. But as you get larger and more capable, again, you're going to go up in price. And then for the Element Enduro, I want to say that these also around the $300 range. I haven't checked in on this in a while, and they do have a lot of different versions at this point. So there may be something that's around the $250 range, and then it goes up to maybe $500 or even more if you want to spend that on a rig. So you get something like, let's say a Vanquish brand, one of their RTRs. It's probably going to be, you know, that $500 to $600 range, but again, the quality goes up. The amount of machine parts versus molded parts on it goes up, and you can kind of just spend whatever you want to spend on these rock crawlers. I mean, some of these cost just as much as a full-size rig would have for me. So a lot of starting out is definitely in your budget. And if you want to start with a small budget, then a small rig is going to get you there. And if you want to start with a slightly larger budget, then you can definitely get a larger rig, or you just end up throwing more aftermarket once you get into it into a smaller rig. So that is definitely, I would say, kind of the biggest point about trying to get into a new hobby is you want to set that budget. But you also need to be realistic about it, and then maybe think down the road, am I going to do some upgrades, some chargers, some stuff like that? So do realize that your basic getting in cost, it's going to get you there and get you going, but you're probably going to want to spend a little bit more money on aftermarket. Maybe you break some parts, you know, you have a big roll down a hill, etc., etc. So do keep that in mind. Now, if we talk about the types of rigs, let's widen this back out from rock crawlers as a general whole thing and talk about scale rigs versus trail rigs versus rock crawlers. Because depending on what you want to do with these, you may want to select one version or another. So a trail rig is something that you're just going to kind of go out walking behind. It may not be the most capable rig, but it is going to be something that is 4x4. It's going to have lock differentials in there generally, or locking and unlocking depending on the brand. And you can take it pretty much anywhere that you would want to walk. Maybe you'll have to pick it up over a big log, of course, but that is what people call a trail rig. A scale rig is going to be something that is even less capable than a trail rig, but you can, of course, also take it on the trails, but it's going to focus on scale looks. And if we're going to select one off of my shelf here, we're going to talk about something like this guy right here. And I couldn't tell you what it's called at the moment. It's been so long. I've got the boxes around here somewhere. Let's see, the 1942, it's of course what is now considered a Jeep, which is it, the Willys Jeep. And again, my apologies that I can't remember exactly which brand. Let's see, Rock Hobby, the Rock Hobby something or another. This is a scale rig. As you can see, super duper scale. It's got, you know, seats in there. You can take pieces in and out. You know, well, I added these scale accessories in this driver here, but it's got, you know, functioning scale details to a degree that a normal trail rig wouldn't have. And let's see if I can open this for you. You know, we've got ourselves like an engine bay and all kinds of little fun stuff. Not very capable, but when you have a rig that's not as capable, oh no, he lost his hat. When a rig is not as capable, it's easier to find terrain that's difficult, which is a lot of the fun for me, at least. You know, so I can't go out to the really big rock crawling sections with this guy, but this guy, this trail rig, or so we can call it, would definitely handle them. Now, when you want to get into more specific rock crawling, it's going to be slower. It's going to be, you know, usually something that's more built like an actual rock buggy itself. And these can be extremely capable. This little guy can almost go everywhere that this guy goes because it's got such good approach and departure clearance right here coming off your tires. You know, this thing will practically get on its end before it scrapes. And it has got all this side clearance here. It's got boat size. This is a true rock crawler when it boils down to it. And some people may want to argue trail rig versus rock crawler. It's not an exact definition. If you do have some exact definitions, definitely leave your comments below about that. But that's generally what you're going to see when you look at something like a rock crawler. And as you go smaller in size, you also lose your capabilities. So, you know, the fact that this is a rock crawler and can keep up with a 10 scale trail rig, it is because it's a rock crawler versus a normal trail rig. But as you go smaller, you do lose that capability. And so something like this, TRX4M, this is an 18th scale rig. It's not really that capable. You're going to have a hard time finding well, hey, let me put it the other way. You're going to have an easy time finding hard obstacles for this. So when you go out with, let's say, children, maybe you don't want to give them a rig that's too capable because you want to keep them very engaged in the driving. Something like this size is actually good for that. It's very difficult to drive and find spots to get through, so you have to think about it. Maybe there's a lot of picking up and going, you know, getting around objects, but these can still be quick enough that when you're walking behind it, you're not, you know, shuffling so slow. It's typically a good walking pace for something like this trail rig. And, you know, that's something that we can also talk about is the speed ranges of them, but that may be getting into a little bit too much detail for now. I think I'll hold that off for a future video and talk about, you know, the speed envelopes that you can have. And if you do have any other specific questions, put them down below and we will do our best to roll those into a future video. But for now, I think that's a good start. You want to start with your budget, of course, if you want to get into RC rock crawling or really any RC in general. This can go for anything. But you start with a budget and then you figure out, you know, where that budget lands as far as your size. You know, if you're looking at $250, you could pretty much go with about anything that's on this table. $350, definitely you can afford these larger ones. And if you've got a lot of friends local to you, especially, that run the larger ones, you may want to get something that's the same size as them. That way, all of the objects that y'all are playing on is going to be kind of an equally, like, it's equal fun for everybody, essentially, if you've got similar rigs. So that's really the biggest thing. You set your budget, you figure out what size of rig that you want. Again, the larger rigs being more capable than the smaller rigs. Maybe you start somewhere in the middle to see how your terrain locally is if you've got nobody else around you. And that's always a good place to start is, you know, you go out, you have fun, and then from there you can learn to work on a rig, you can learn to build some courses, or just go out and have fun and trail ride and do something that's a little bit different. I will say the one reason why I really love the rock crawling aspect is that you get out, you're in the wilderness or even if it's in town, but you're still outside. you're getting fresh air, you're walking around, you're moving behind your crawler, and it's not like you're in one place. So all the other RC, even if it's go fast, if it's bashing, if it's racing, you're pretty much standing in one spot. UAVs, airplanes, all of them, you're just standing in one spot and you're watching the vehicle go around, you know, doing laps or, you know, zoom, 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 back and forth. But with a crawler, you're actually going out with that vehicle and you're going behind it on a trail or on the rocks or something, and it's a much more active aspect of the radio control industry. And that's probably the biggest reason why I truly love the rock crawling more than all the rest. Is I get bored standing in one space just, you know, looking at things going around, but I love getting out and exploring with my rig, which that's probably the most fun part for me, is actually exploring with a rig in a new location. You don't know what you're going to come across, and the fact that the rig can get through almost anything and you can just follow behind it on a trail is just so satisfying for me. So that's why I love it personally. But let me know in the comments why you may love crawling if you're already in it, why you would suggest somebody to get into this niche if you're going to get a newbie in around you, and maybe what you would suggest as your first recommendations. You know, what rigs do you like, or maybe what would you look for in a rig? Just in general, I think those are good recommendations for people. So leave them down below and help everybody out. Otherwise, if you do have any questions, leave them below and we'll do our best to get to them. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.